Here we are on live. This is Joe Moore, CEO of Psychedelics Today. Just getting rolling with Instagram, and we can start this conversation. Today, I'm going to be joined by Rio Garcia, who's a new member of the Psychedelics Today team, but no stranger to Psychedelics Today. How are you doing today, Rio?
I'm doing well, thank you. Greetings, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today talking with Joe, and I'm excited to kind of deep dive a little bit.
It's going to be fun. I think there's a lot we're going to uncover here today, and I'm
Mhm.
excited. So you are you're helping us with Vital, helping answer everybody's questions that people might have about Vital. So
Mhm.
yeah, we introduced you just yesterday in an email to everybody, which is great. And now to the
Mhm.
social audience, and you're not just a team member. You're all graduate of the Vital program, so you're going
Mhm.
to have some like really unique insight about that. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited to get into that with you. So
Mhm. Yeah.
before we start chatting about Vital and psychedelics today more, I'm just kind of curious how we can start digging into you and your story and how psychedelics kind of came into your life and also helped, and then later how education helped. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how did psychedelics kind of enter your world, Rio?
For me, it started out kind of recreationally when I was younger. Um, and the festival thing and the festival circuit. So Um, and then it started to kind of transform for me once I started to, throughout basically my whole 20s, I witnessed my friend Morgan, who was battling cancer. She got diagnosed shortly after we first met when we were 21, went through chemotherapy, a full hysterectomy, menopause twice at age 21, um, and then was in remission and then got re-diagnosed a few months later and then was on hospice for over 6 years. So, like, 6 or 7 years she was on hospice and strung along, um, kind of on a little, like, slew of prescription medications such as Dilaudid, let's see, like, fentanyl, and so just kind of witnessing her journey and experience, with that and where I felt like maybe some of these systems in place had kind of let her down,
Mm,
and so witnessing her journey and then at that time, towards the end, I was working with a medicine woman from New Mexico, and she was willing to come up to Michigan, where we're from, um, and do, like, an end of life ceremony with her, and so we didn't know if that was gonna be, like, for end of life or it would actually help her heal and move on from the cancer, um, but either way, my friend Morgan was open to it. However, because we grew up in kind of the boondocks in Michigan, her family wasn't maybe as, like, aware, and educated, in the whole world of psychedelics and plant medicine and healing with, entheogenic medicines, and so we never got to do that, and so I know it would have helped her so much in either direction, either to heal or to cross over, and so, yeah, so that's kind of where my experience stems from, and just watching her and knowing that there had to be other ways to heal, and there had to be other options and alternative styles, and so that's what has led me on this whole path, and I'm so grateful to be here, and then, you know, um, actually, when I was enrolled in Vital is when she had passed, and so um then that really just fueled my passion for learning and education and harm reduction in the space, especially, being able to reach different parts of the world globally and the nation globally of maybe people who aren't fully aware. So that way, like people like my friend Morgan, she could have actually had a ceremony like that that could have potentially helped her a lot. So that's kind of my background and my story of what has brought me into the space and my passion behind and my why behind this work and getting people connected with the education.
mm. Yeah, that's beautiful, and thanks for sharing that. It's fascinating how these things can, first be a little trivial maybe, and then become radically important.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not necessarily with that intent, right? It can just kind of happen, and
Hmm.
that's beautiful that you all had that experience, and I hope it was helpful. Years later, how do you look back on that? Is it like a really important moment for you?
Yeah, it is a really important moment for me because that was all of my 20s that we were going through that, and I knew during that experience that it was going to be really pivotal to my life in the future. I just didn't really know how or see how in those moments. In those moments, it was just really hard to witness her kind of, slowly withering away on her parents, in her parents' living room. But since then, I mean, it just has completely driven my life in how I show up in the world and how I show up in this field. And yeah, and the training and the education too that I received from, Vital and psychedelics today has also helped me so much in the space.
Mm. And so, what was your what was going on for you before you saw Vital that made Vital interesting to you?
For me, I knew that I wanted to be in the space. I
Mm.
just was unsure and a little unclear of how I was going to do that. And I was kind of receiving some hands-on training, with just kind of mentoring from different people, and that was great as well. And for me, being in the Vital training program actually helped give me, like, the practical tools to apply that to creating a business,
Mm.
and also a lot of education and then personal growth throughout the whole journey as well. But I feel like it gave me practical tools.
Mm. Yeah, that's cool. So, I think a lot of folks are saying, okay, this stuff is really interesting, psychedelics. There's a really compelling story here, and um, in some cases, like the stories and sometimes the data are saying yes, in fact, this is going to work better than a lot of treatments for XYZ conditions, and or if those treatments don't work, let's try this. And it seems like really pragmatic, um, not too out on a limb. Like sometimes folks are really locked into only doing it with like pharmaceutical grade stuff prescribed by a doctor, and other times people are okay growing their own or using something their friends grew, right? And that it's just a big spectrum of stuff out there. And I think like one of our approaches at PT is just this very big tent approach to say, yeah, you're important too. That is also important. Great, thanks for sharing. And trying to be as welcoming as we can be. And was it a little intimidating, like with the idea that there's going to be doctors in the room and you're studying right next to like
Yes.
psychiatrists and therapists and all that? Yeah.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. When I first applied, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm not a licensed medical professional. Am I able to do this training and to, like, be in the same room with some of these people who have so much educational background with, with their profession?" And so I did really like the feelings of, like, inclusivity in the space and feeling welcome despite, what anyone's background might be, and I think also, even if you are a licensed medical professional, or even if you have been in the space for however long working with psychedelics, I think there's so much value in education that you guys are bringing into this training program that it doesn't matter, what your background is. You're gonna learn and take something from this.
Yeah. One of my favorite results from physicians is halfway through the program where they have this breakthrough and they say things like, I was able to be human.
Mhm.
Often when you go to a psychiatry or other kind of medical conference, you have to play by a certain guidebook, like you play with certain rules, show up a certain way, and
Mhm.
not necessarily express the curiosity that might be most warranted, right? It's like uh, Vital, we make it such that everybody should be comfortable being open and having these conversations.
Mhm.
And I just really love that part and just
Mhm.
allowing somebody who's so important in the world to go, oh yeah, I'm I'm still a human,
Mhm.
you
Exactly,
know.
and giving people that space to have these conversations without feeling like they can't maybe use the word like psychedelic or they have to be like hush hush about it. It gives people who, maybe can't in other places be able to have these psychedelic conversations and just be themselves, and to kind of step out of that psychedelic closet, which feels nice for people to just, be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what what were some of your first experiences like in the program? Like
Let's see.
intimidating, welcoming.
For me, some of my first experiences in the program, I mean, really, I loved every single, like, aspect from the very beginning. It was all just, like there was so much, like, knowledge and wisdom just coming in from all of the amazing speakers and, like, top industry leaders that you guys bring on every week to the Tuesday webinars. Um, so I don't know, I guess kind of like being like a kid in a candy store, just like every Tuesday, like sitting down, you're like ready to take notes and to learn from some of these amazing people and big names in the field. And also like from such a wide range, right, of like indigenous perspectives to like clinical to like legislation to whatever else it may be. There's just such a wide variety of educators. And I think that is, like, one of the key things that stands out for me from just, like, what my experience was like from the beginning is just being so excited to learn about all these new different things that I had no idea about, even though I had already been practicing in the space, and so, um, yeah, that's kind of one big one for me is just all the people who get brought on, throughout the whole year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing
Mhm,
that. And it's what we were trying to do was give people the opportunity to have something like what Kyle and I had with Dream Shadow.
mhm,
Um, and you don't need to be near Vermont to do that, right? Like, how do we share that with people in America and all over the world? And that was it. Like you know, they were such they are such special people that like all sorts of fascinating folks would just roll through. You know, all of a sudden you're hanging out with four professors at a breathwork workshop, or artists and filmmakers, dance professionals, all sorts of like just amazing folks who are willing to engage in their big inner process.
mhm,
So let's maybe chat about that because we're kind of calling it like a transformational education. We're calling it kind of like process oriented education, and a good result for us is your your whole understanding of psychedelics is different by the end of the program. You're um, in awe of what's possible here, and you're connected with a bunch of folks.
mhm.
And like did you have a substantial transformation through your time in Vital?
Yeah, for me, I think I definitely did have a big transformation, just in the sense of my understanding of
Mm.
this whole industry, grew so much. Um, and like I mentioned, I was already kind of working in the space before, like mentoring under some medicine people and helping out in ceremonies in that way. However, entering into Vital just kind of really opened all of that up to me, and there's so much more that I had no idea about. And so I guess just kind of being exposed to everything. I feel like you guys kind of go over everything. You bring on people who are in every aspect of the field and and then especially too with like the specializing, and being able to kind of dive a little bit deeper into, something that maybe you're more passionate about. So just kind of really giving me more of a broader view is one big transformation, and one big takeaway. and and then yeah, that along with my own personal transformation, of dealing with death and grief throughout my time within the program. And it really, I think being in the vital training just, it matured me as well. Um, and then also like seeing and being able to witness what other people, maybe in my study groups or just other people in the whole overall cohort, created for themselves and within themselves after, during and after the training as well, was also really cool to witness.
Mm, I love that. Like I've seen so much interesting unfolding because it's such a special container, right? Like yes, you have those bigger webinars, but you have this smaller group and you get close to those people over time.
Hmm.
And I think I think that's a really, amazing aspect of it, right? You have this group of folks that, all strangers at the beginning, but by the end of a year, you all know each other so well, right? And your interest in the space, and maybe there's room for collaborations, right? Like, did you witness people kind of collaborate on projects after Vital?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely did, and especially even during Vital as well. Um, just as far as like, you know, maybe teaching each other, different things about what different people knew in the space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then kind of sharing that wisdom and knowledge with each other, whether it be like, so many different things, like, maybe running the retreat center or growing or um, just different things. And so there's a lot of collaborations. And I saw people doing, a lot of cool stuff, such as, yeah, opening their own grows or um, opening retreat centers, in Southern California, um, or even, one woman from my study group was facilitating these beautiful retreats in northern Michigan, which is just cool because that's where I'm from. And I was like, wow, so many of my friends and family back in Michigan would love to go to your retreats in Michigan to, because they're accessible. Um, so that was really cool. And yeah, just a lot of collaborations, a lot of throughout the year being able to get close with each other through the study
Mm-hmm.
groups and then kind of bouncing ideas off of each other and being inspired by each other and yeah, and seeing where the growth can go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. Like I've seen people start pharma companies. I've seen retreats. I've seen
Mhm.
amazing friendships. I think music projects. I think I've seen some really interesting video projects. So, like, part of it is there's this final project at the end that people do, and
Mhm.
I think I think that's really really awesome because people get to focus an interest into a project and actually create something, and I and it's a cool opportunity to then share it with your peers.
Mhm.
Like that's really really amazing. Do you remember what you did for your project?
Yeah, I did. I created I think it was like a 4 or 5 day long like retreat plan that I wanted to do with my clients. And, and that was really fun to get to create that and create that whole outline. And I
Mm.
think the final project was also really cool and inspiring because, throughout the year we're with these people in our study group. And then at the end, you get to see how everyone wants to integrate this experience into their life afterwards. And it was really beautiful to see, all the effort and the creativity as well that people put into their final presentations to share with each other and again get that
Mm.
inspiration and kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And then there was even some collaborations as well that I saw in the final projects, and so that was cool to see. And it was just, yeah, great and amazing to see like where everyone wants to go from here now.
That's really neat. Yeah, I remember seeing students put together retreats all over the place, and invite us even. I'm like,
Yes.
I can't. I'm sorry. I love that you're doing it and thank you, but I can't. And like I love seeing too clinic people, right? I remember one student was a ketamine clinic operator and had a lot of insight through the Vital program, and I think likely changed how they were practicing medicine in
Hmm.
a substantial way
Hmm.
um, after Vital, which is like what better thing than that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of stuff do you hear from others about Vital, like out in the wild,
Hmm.
or alumni or interested people?
I hear from people and just from, I mean, even a lot of my friends in my field who I've spoken with who have either done the training or who are, interested in it or who have signed up. I've had a couple of my friends enroll in previous cohorts, but um, everyone, is very fascinated again by the the top like industry global leaders that you guys bring into the space and the education and the wide variety of knowledge and wisdom that you can gain. And I've heard a lot of people talk about the the study group aspect and that they enjoy connecting with other people and kind of building that little support group that you meet with weekly and getting to dive deep with each other weekly as well. um, I think people really value that. And another aspect is the retreat aspect too, that I've heard a lot of people really love, that kind of in-person aspect.
Hmm. We're going to work on bringing that back. So we kind of stopped doing our own retreats for a little bit. And I
Hmm.
think what we're going to do is so there is an experiential requirement for
Yeah.
Vital. Um, and, folks should know that. So
Hmm.
it doesn't, we're not all that specific about what it needs to be, though we do want to help you making that decision because there's definitely some dangerous retreats out there that we would like you to not go to. Um, but then, we're who's to say a course of ketamine therapy in your local area is not okay as an experiential, So, like, talk to us about that and what I think we might do, Kyle and I, and maybe with your help too, Rio, is start producing more breathwork workshops and just getting, Vital students get like a 2 week period to sign up first, and then we open it up to the public. And you know, uh, these are a lot cheaper than going somewhere to do mushrooms and paying somebody to do that with you because you know pricing for these kinds of services is complicated because there is this element of legal risk, right? And then like how do we price legal risk? Like that's I don't know. That's a complicated one. So that's why I really like the breathwork discussion because we can do this stuff in a safe and legal way in just about everywhere in the world, I think. Maybe France is a little edgy around graph oriented breathwork. Do you know that story?
Mm, I actually don't, but I think I've heard part of it before.
I'll share it in a future thing. I find it fascinating. Um, and actually, there's one form of breathwork that's illegal here in Colorado, but we won't talk about that. It's
Mm,
not this. It's not
okay.
this. Um, and yeah, I love doing breathwork facilitation, and Kyle does as well. So stay tuned for that kind of stuff, folks. That's coming. And sometimes Rio, like, Vital looks like it's a little too big for some people to bite off right away,
Mhm.
and we've brought back navigating psychedelics. Um, and Kyle's teaching that and starts in I think February 18. That'll kick off, and that's like it used to be 35 and 35 hours if you just take the pre-recorded version, and 47 hours if you do the live supported version with us. And I don't know what the totals are these days, but it's a substantial program. It takes up a lot of your 9 weeks, and that is a good way to check to see if you like our teaching style, if our content's good for you, and might be where you want to go next. A lot of people have this career interest in the space. Like I'm seeing it more and more, Rio. Are you seeing that interest slow down at all?
No, no. I think a lot of people, especially people who are already in the space, whether clinically or underground or whatever it may be, even if you don't work with psychedelics yet, I think a lot of people are realizing this is the future. People are already using these substances regardless of legalities. And the number one thing is to be educated around harm reduction, risk, ethics, and all of the above. And so, yeah, it's not slowing down. This is the future of medicine. This is the future of healing. And this is the future of the planet.
Yeah. Are you like was there a particular like story about medical use cases that struck you, Alex, like early on? Was it just depression or was it something else?
For me, depression and the power of, these substances and plant medicine, fungi medicine, entheogenic medicine to help people heal emotional trauma that's stored in the body somatically, and to help people like my friend Morgan, who had, cancer or something really severe or a chronic illness. And so if we can get to that root cause, then, we can really heal the body. And I think a lot of things, even some plant medicines, have been kind of like a band-aid, whereas there are certain
Mm-hmm.
substances that can help you dig down deeper and get more to the root cause. However, again, these things are all just a tool that help you unlock these things within inside of you. And so all these things are already inherently within you. It's just, some things can act as a tool to help you get there a little bit quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. It's it's an accelerant in a lot of ways. I
Mhm.
heard this term recently, karmic accelerator, around
Mm,
something very different, and I was like, wow, that's a really interesting term. And
mhm,
uh, it's a loaded term too, because the concept is like we have our karma, right? We have to work through that kind of stuff, and then there's this. It's not always comfortable to work through our karma, and then there's the idea of like, what if it starts going faster? Can we handle that? And that's the psychedelic conversation in a way. It's like, can we handle it if it starts to move faster in us? And like, are we able to? Do we have enough support for that? Do we have enough space for that in our lives? Like, there's people who definitely should not be using anytime soon, like
mhm,
even in a clinical capacity, right? And then there's folks who have plenty of space. They, with it enough or desperate enough and, supported enough to be able to do it. And then
mhm.
like, yeah, um, how do you like? I have some ideas on how you might now think about psychedelics pre and post, but like what were some kind of like shifts for you, like before and after Vital, like thoughts around psychedelics, like that might have changed?
Mhm. For me, some things that kind of shifted around for my thinking about psychedelics before and after Vital. Um, let's see. I guess again, going back to what I was speaking on earlier, just kind of gaining more of an in-depth understanding around all these different facets that go into it. And, if you wanted to show up in the space, you can show up in so many different ways. It's not just facilitation or it's not just retreats. You can show up in legislation, policy. Um, maybe you create a product line. So many different things and ideas and ways to show up in the space, and kind of gaining a bigger understanding of how big it really is globally as well, like this movement. And again, this is the future. This is where, health and wellness is going, and it's going to continue going. And it is a global renaissance that's happening. And yeah, so that's kind of a big shift for me, was just understanding more in depth that this is really global, and understanding more of all the different facets and aspects of this global renaissance.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to take a moment and allow people to ask some questions here too, like Instagram, X, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. You should all be able to ask questions, and then I can kind of bring them up here to dig into stuff and preference on Vital. But like if you have other questions too, we can spend some time on that. So I think we must be approaching over 500 people have been in the program. Like I think there's over 400 graduates and over 500 um, people who engaged, including the current like cohort. So it's a lot of people, and for me, it's like really inspiring to know that people took us that seriously and took themselves that seriously to take a program that really spoke to them. Right, the safe path is, oh, I'm gonna go become a licensed therapist, then I'm gonna do XYZ training program and do it the hyper legal way. That's great if that's what you want to do, but there's a lot of paths, right? Like there's people who after Vital said, I'm actually going to drop my therapy license because I want to practice in a different way. I find that wild because that's, there's so much security with a license,
Mm-hmm.
but it's such a different frame.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. Have you seen that? Like people kind of like radically shifting their careers afterwards?
I have, and maybe not so much in that sense, but I have in the sense of um, witnessing somebody from one of my study groups, and I can't remember exactly. I think he was maybe a general surgeon, and him
Mm-hmm.
and another person in the training, they were going to team up, and they were going to open their own, I think, ketamine clinic together. And so just
Mm.
you know, seeing that transition and seeing them kind of team up, as doctors in the space, I think was really cool. But yeah, then you have other people who are like, yeah, I want to completely drop my license and operate in a different way, which I think is also amazing. So it's crazy and wild and beautiful to see the dramatic shifts that can happen within people.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I love that. And um I'm just so hopeful, right? Like there's so much left. Like we all have so many more gifts maybe than we're um usually allowed to share. I heard this like really stark commentary this morning. Um so there's all sorts of interesting stuff happening now that like TikTok might be going away in a couple days, and what was the line today? There's all sorts of people like providing commentary on what's going on here versus China, and like the perspectives on like what is happening in America from their perspective. And it's not necessarily wrong. It's like they're not free. They're living inside a big corporation. It's like, oh, that's fascinating. And like that idea that like we're kind of like reduced into like little widgets is problematic, but the idea that psychedelics might be able to free us from that and like open up like what is possible for us and what is possible for our communities in the world, like that really breaks that frame in a
Mhm,
really meaningful way. And like I I don't know, I really kind of like kind of ruffled my feathers this morning.
mhm,
But then I reflected on some like art pieces I saw um, somewhat recently that kind of reflect that idea. But and then the hope is right there. Like there's a lot of freedom right inside us, right? And I
mhm,
think Vital speaks to that a bit. Like, is there any of that that came up for you as going through Vital?
mhm. Yeah, I think one thing that came up for me is um, that accessing that level of freedom, within inside of us. And a lot of people in the space, I've heard the term of like freedom is a frequency. You just have to tap into your freedom. And that is true. And however, there are different parts of the world that might be under more, I don't know, control than other parts. And so I do think that psychedelics and this whole movement and revolution have the power to just help people access different parts of themselves that maybe they haven't before, to gain more of that sense of freedom from within and that sovereignty, and to just show up in the world authentically as who they are, and to stand up for themselves and their communities. And um, yeah, so tapping into that freedom and unlocking those the new parts of the self. And I think psychedelics can help with like a perspective change, around how we view the world and how we show up in the world as well. So, mhm.
Like it. Yeah, that's great. I think the internal freedom line is it's a fun history thing that people might not know yet. It's like Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, I think, post Harvard had this organization called IFIF, International Federation for Internal Freedom, and I think they were doing that in like Baja, Mexico, maybe, or maybe just somewhere near Acapulco, maybe. But like the idea was that they just set up some sort of like commune situation, training situation, and um, yeah, we're trying to teach this concept. I don't I don't know super well how that landed. It didn't last a ton of time, but Tim was always on the run from the cops, so it was a different kind of situation there. And I think Rio, perhaps like one of the biggest differences in our programs is like I really want folks to understand the broad and wide history of psychedelics. Not just you know everything that's happened since Rick Strassman kind of rebooted this in the 90s, but the 60s, the 50s, before, and even First Nations perspectives and experience in history, right? Like, did that come through for you at all?
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely came through for me in gaining more of the history and, education around, you know, yeah, just the history of psychedelics and plant medicines. And I think, I want to tie that into like that also has helped me learn more about my own ancestry and my own history and my family's history, and how, that's relevant with how I want to show up in the space. And so, throughout my time in Vital, I've dug a lot into my own ancestry and genealogy, and I'm Colombian and I'm Dominican. And so, I've also been, on this path of learning about, the history of how does this work show up in Colombia and Dominica. Um, and I remember the first podcast episode that I ever listened to actually was with Wade Davis, and he
Mm.
wrote the book River of Magdalena. And I still have yet to read that book, but he talks a lot about Colombia and his work in Colombia. And yeah, and so, throughout this whole journey, my experience within Vital, learning about the history of it, learning about the history, in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And I think that is a really great point that maybe other programs don't touch on, is the history, like, and the global history and what people were doing. And then how you can tie that in with your own personal ancestry and your own personal history, and where your ancestors came from, and like how they were working with plants and these types of things.
That was such an important interview for me with Wade Davis. Like, he
Mm,
was so amazing, and the way he speaks about Colombia is just extraordinary. And
mhm,
I yeah, such deep like reverence for the Amazon, for the river, for yeah, for so much. And he's been such a good like steward and educator and part of our kind of larger world. And that's cool that it actually worked for you in terms of your lineage. Um,
mhm,
and yeah, the one thing I find fascinating is the difference in the traditions around ayahuasca in the Amazon basin, and just like there's so many different practices, so many different ways that this stuff is done. And often we describe it and talk about it as like it's a monoculture, and it's really not. um,
mhm.
and I hope that changes people's perspectives. Um,
Mhm.
how did that go for you? Like, was that a interesting bit? Like, just this
Mhm.
idea that there isn't just one way that people did this in the past, in today,
Yeah,
even.
yeah. Yeah, I think so, learning more about, yeah, different cultures and how different, um, cultures have protected these medicines and carry these medicines and, even globally, and then how it shows up today. And I think giving people that perspective that, like, yeah, maybe you don't have to go, down to another country to have an experience like this. It's becoming more accessible here and in other countries, and it's also becoming accessible, legally if you are looking for that sort of experience. And so it's interesting to see, like, everyone's gonna be doing it in their own way and showing up in their own way, and it's gonna be it gets to be really beautiful in that sense. And I think one thing that's really important with considering how you want to show up in the space is going back to the history, learning about all these different facets of how people have been using these medicines and substances for years and hundreds of years.
Hmm.
And then tying that back to your ancestry as well and how your ancestors were using these medicines. Um, to really help give you kind of the way forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's a ton there. And one thing I like to insert often is that, you know the the empires of the world tried to erase a lot of this stuff from history and suppress it so that we didn't have access to it anymore, like the traditional ways. A lot of that
Mhm,
was done through, getting rid of the language,
mhm,
um, and burning the books and the people that knew the most. Um, I think of like Ireland for myself. There's some really classic stories there and relatively well documented, but they did a really good job eliminating those religions. Like, we actually don't know how they did a lot of stuff in the non-Romanized parts of Ireland and England. It's fascinating that they were able to do it so well, but then they tried to do it again in the Americas. But the tradition survived. Thankfully, the Amazon is very big.
mhm,
Um, and it wasn't clear because maybe the deal is the cultures weren't super prolific in terms of like size of the groups, that it was
mhm,
just like impossible. you know it was really
mhm.
decentralized maybe, and
Yeah.
so there's some good survival.
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is the kindest way I've ever spoken about it, by the way. I'm
I know, same.
usually
I'm
really
like,
fired up.
I know. There's a lot there, we could go really deep with that, but yeah.
Right,
It's like
yeah.
the whole movement of "We're still here." I don't know if you see that pop up with, like, indigenous accounts on Instagram and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we're still here, and we're still gonna be, um, working with the plants in these ways and helping people heal in ways that are in alignment with maybe more of a nature-based perspective and um, maybe something with a little bit more like deeper meaning, you know?
Mm. So what are you seeing right now in terms of your peers? Like, are folks mostly holding like spiritual spaces, or are they trying to hold space in a way that works for folks? Um, yeah, what are you seeing out there in
Mhm.
psychedelia?
For me, out here in psychedelia, I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I was in Southern California for a little bit. And for me in my space, it's a lot of uh, retreats. I see a lot of retreats, but then it's also, maybe plant medicine retreats or fungi retreats, but it's also like somatic based retreats and parts work. And I think the future is the psychedelic revolution. But I also think part of the future is like healing in these group spaces with people and retreats. I think we're gonna see like so many more of these types of spaces coming up. But and and then I also see people like wanting to create the spaces for people to, facilitate the retreats in or to come to the retreat. Um, and I think there's a lot that can go into creating a space and making it really beautiful for, for a journey or whatever it may be that you're, going to be doing somatic healing or whatever. But I think having that um, added level of like aesthetic and visual helps so much with an in-person experience, no matter what, if it's including entheogenic substances or not. Um, and it gives that element of like safety. So for me, that's what comes up in my field a lot is creating spaces for healing and for people to come together in groups, and whether that be like breath work as well, or somatic stuff, or plant medicine stuff. So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of group spaces for me in my field.
Yeah. And is that, do you think that's going to be a big part of the future as well? Groups as opposed to like one-on-ones, or are there any other things you see as part of the future maybe too?
Hmm. Um, I see a lot of like one-on-one stuff, one-on-one group stuff, and and even I've seen a little bit of like, well, like virtual sessions and stuff. But I think there's an element that people are really craving, which is
Mm-hmm.
that like, um, yeah, more of that like deep-hearted connection, and that kind of the small group, like the intimate connection and being able to drop in with each other and build community. I think people are wanting to build community right now, and
Mm-hmm.
whether that's virtually or in person. And one thing that I really admire and love about Vital and psychedelics today as a whole is that you guys have such a global network and global community of people who are in this field and working in this field, and so it's cool to see that global connection and to feel globally connected with people. Like I, even just from my cohort, there's so many people who I could go visit and hang out with and connect with globally, which is so cool to have that.
Yeah, I remember one of our students started up the Thai Psychedelic Society, which I thought was amazing. And
Hmm.
like, yeah, one of the first ones in Asia, from what I understand. I think Kamya, I forget her full name. Kamya had the Indian Psychedelic Society, which is really cool too. But
Hmm.
there's so much happening worldwide.
Hmm.
It's hard to track it all.
Hmm.
Um, I'm kind of curious, Rio, on the kind of clinician perspective. So if we're talking about like doctors and therapists, right? A lot of folks are like, this isn't relevant to me. This like I can't bring psilocybin into my practice anytime soon. Like why would I want this education? Like what kind of stuff do you think is there for clinicians? Like why should clinicians get trained up in something like a vital training program?
I think that clinicians should get trained in something like this, like a vital training program, because it's so important to know. And like we were talking about earlier, people are going to be using these substances no matter what. And it's important for everyone
Right.
in the space of healthcare and wellness, regardless if you're above ground or underground, to have the knowledge and education for, to help with harm reduction and ethics and knowledge around this also, because people are going to be, you know, using these substances, and it's important to, to approach people from a place of non-judgment, and to just be a little bit educated around some of these substances or experiences that maybe your clients might be having.
Sorry, my camera is a little crazy right now.
That's okay. I was like, is that my camera or yours?
Um, and then what do you think about like some things around just how many people are microdosing and how that might maybe am I clear yet?
A little bit. There we go.
Um,
Um, yeah, around microdosing.
um,
Oh,
how about like microdosing and like clinician perspectives on microdosing maybe,
yeah.
or
Um,
what do they need
I
to know?
think I think that is really important because I think a lot of people, especially as the psychedelic renaissance keeps furthering, I think a lot of people are going to start with microdosing. And so I think it's really important for clinicians to be educated around microdosing. And there's a great book called The Microdosing Guidebook as well. And that is written for people who are interested in microdosing. And it's also written for the clinical perspective as well to help support clients who are interested in microdosing. And that book is really great. It's really educational for clinicians and any licensed medical professionals. There's a whole second section, about that. So I think it's just important for people to be educated around the harm reduction and the ethics and how to approach your clients who are going to be using these substances.
Right, wildly important.
Hmm.
Um, wish my wish my connection was a little easier right now, but any kind of closing thoughts about Vital, and can you share a little bit about the application process and that discount we want?
Hmm. So, my closing thoughts on Vital are that I just want to let people know that Vital really is an inclusive space, and anyone is welcome in the space, regardless if you are a licensed medical professional, or if you're a coach, or if you're a healer, or a massage therapist, or if you're a techie, or if you are a mom and you're interested in this, in this work or just in this field, or you just want knowledge around any of it. So I just want to share with people again that it's inclusive, everyone is welcome here. And and it might feel a little intimidating or, you know, like a lot at first, but I think hop on a call with me and, we can talk about it and I can help answer any questions that anyone has around the enrollment process or around the whole year-long training program. And for the enrollment process as well, so what you do is you go to the Vital website and fill out the application. And right now we do have um, the discount code for the waived applications, a waived application fee. And we have some early bird specials, going on right now as well until February 7th. And some of those are you get to join Kyle's intro to navigating psychedelics training that starts on February 17th, which is really exciting. So you kind of get a little pre like pre-taste, I guess, of how the training is going to go and Kyle's like style of teaching. And then you get to join the book club, which is cool because then you get to start connecting with community and people who are in the Vital training program as well. And anything else that you want to add for the early birds?
I think that's pretty good, right? Like the idea of the book club, and then we have the Kyle's Navigating Psychedelics, which is a really amazing foundations program. People should join that anyway. If you're not interested in Vital, come
Mhm.
check out the Navigating Psychedelics program that kicks off in February. You can learn more at psychedeliceducationcenter.com. Um, and there's a way to kind of de-risk that if you want to join Navigating Psychedelics use it to test if you're ready for Vital. The amount you pay for navigating psychedelics will be reduced from your. Oh man, internet is really doing it today. I am sorry, everybody. Um, Working on getting fiber optics so we have better performance here. This is the worst it's been in a long time. Um, but yeah, so what I was saying is navigating psychedelics is just an amazing foundations program. It's a good way to see if we are right for you, if this topic is right for you, and then also it's a little de-risked because if you want Vital, that amount you spend on navigating psychedelics, we're going to give you a discount for Vital on that. And for, like Rio was saying earlier, there is a limited time window for discounts on the application fee, like no application fee, and a bigger kind of discount on Vital itself. So, what was the discount code again, Rio?
The discount code is Vital 25 app.
Vital 25 app. Yeah, amazing. And shoot us an email if you need
I'm
some
sorry,
help
it's
info
Vital
at
2025 app.
Vital 2025 app. Amazing. I think all caps. And
Mm-hmm.
that'll get you a free application.
Yes, the Vital 2025 app in all caps will get you the waived application fee. So that way you can enroll in Vital for cohort 5 that starts May 6th.
Well, I think it's time to wrap. I think the
Yeah.
internet has had it with me for the day. But Rio, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I hope folks do take us up on this. If you have questions, Rio, where can people reach you?
People can reach me through my email, rio@psychedelicstoday.com, or the email we sent out yesterday if you want to book a call with me. Or I could even put like my booking call link in this private chat. I'm not sure if that would show up for everyone, but yeah, rio@psychedelicstoday.com.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Rio. I'm really excited about going forward here. It's going to be a fun next round of Vital.
Yeah, I'm super stoked too. Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.